Hello, welcome to the March 29th Ways and Means meeting. Please join me for Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't see any public to participate, so we'll move right on. I apologize, I had a bad agenda order. I'm going to move to police first so that the fire doesn't come and go and come and go. Chief Brown, if you could join us, please. And do we have a subcommittee? Oh, this is account 210. And we have a subcommittee report. There you are.
Yep, right.
Wait.
Sure. So Cheyenne and I met with Chief Brown a couple of weeks ago, went through the budget. I'll start off just with the cover sheet. So percent budget increase requested 1.94%, and previous year 0.84%, so keeping things pretty tight. The major drivers to the budget, as listed here, and we'll talk about these salaries, obviously. There's cost of the vehicles went up. Support and maintenance for Pro Phoenix records management system. That's a system that that was a warrant last year and was split between the fire and police department to give them better kind of records management capabilities. So we'll see that in both budgets this year in terms of the ongoing cost for some of that. There was also body-worn cameras are in the budget as well. Lease payment for a motorcycle, so that's something new that the chief brought back this year. And funds for anticipated ballistic vests for new hires, because there are, I believe it was 3 people retiring.
Correct.
Next year, so just kind of, when people come in new, they get new vests. In terms of budget line items over 10%, that was kind of a marker we put in the cover sheet. We'll kind of go through that. There's some things in capital outlay that we'll go through, contracted services as well, materials and supplies, but for the most part, those were not large dollar amounts, although some of the percentages were large. There'll be no personnel changes, no movements between part-time, full-time, no staffing changes anticipated this year. They will continue the mental health clinician on a full-time basis, as has been happening for the past few years, but half the salary is offset by ARPA. Let's see, no warrant articles this year, and see some grants here. That's kind of the cover sheet. So what I'll do is I'll just walk through the budget, the big budget sheet, kind of the front cover, looking at the salaries. I just think it's amazing that the salary increase here, total salary increase 0.36%. I asked the chief how he did it, and it was just, I guess, transitions of people going out kind of at, that have been here for a long time, going out with, obviously higher salaries, higher steps, and bringing other people in at lower amounts, but very impressive to even be able to do that for that amount of money. Looking down now at expenses, contracted services, just kind of flip to that page a little further on in the budget, and so this one was up, contracted services up 52.99%, and if you look at the detail on that, it's really under one line item for software and hardware maintenance. Drove that increase, and again, this is from the records management system, the Pro Phoenix system. Support and subscription was added at around $20,500, plus $58,000 for body camera. That includes kind of support and subscription on the body cameras as well, plus storage for all the videos that are shot by those is a significant amount, and that'll be kind of a annual expense. So that's what drove that increase on contracted services. Going back to the top sheet, materials and supplies, up 72.48%. Taking a look at the detail on that. This was really driven by the last entry here in the detail page of $50,000. This was for a server to house the ProPhoenix software. So that's the expense there, and the expectation is that going forward that may be shifted over to the MIS budget. The couple of the MIS people helped set up the software, were very kind of instrumental in getting it all configured and working, and so we're kind of shifting them into doing more with the police station, the police IT, not 100%, but kind of shifting that way. But it's a different type of beast than the schools, because it requires 24/7 coverage and that type of thing. So I don't know that we'll get all the way there, but there's the shift going on that I think this committee has asked about in the past. Again, back to the cover sheet. The last item of note is capital outlay was up 12.77%. Looking at the detail there, that was because the cruisers, the three cruisers that are in the budget each year, have gone up in price from prior request of $165,000 to $194,100. Just if you've looked at cars lately, they've gone up quite a bit. I think there's also, not that it's driving the cost, but there's a shift back to gas-powered cruisers, because the hybrids, three of them are in place now, but they all had problems within the last year, some downtime. I just don't think that the technology is there yet for those to be run the way a cruiser is run, like all the time. Maybe driven a little hard. So that's just kind of a side note. But that's the budget overall. The subcommittee was 2-0 in favor.
Great. We have Chief Thomas Brown with us. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, happy to answer any questions for you. Mike did a great job.
Great. Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Oh, there must be at least one question. Roger. Good try, though. All right.
That was as good as it gets. That's the best subcommittee report I've ever heard, quite frankly.
Sorry, bits and pieces. So under the overtime, there's an item listed other for $90,000.
Yes.
There are a lot of other items, other overtime items that are itemized, but that's the biggest one.
Right.
So what happens there?
So there are many times where we're not able to anticipate openings on the shift, or in fact, I actually have the information here. So we're able to basically categorize our overtime into those big areas there, which you'll see: vacation coverage, sickness, injury, and then all of the things under the other. But what's encompassed in that other are things like call-outs for NEMLEC. So for instance, we have 4 officers that are assigned to the SWAT team on mutual aid. They potentially could be going out. We could have emergencies such as a homicide, fatal crashes. We most recently had a woman wander off into the woods, which was like about a 24-hour operation. Those are, you can't necessarily budget for it. You don't know when it's coming. We also have town events that could come up where the rec department will contact us for Burlington Day, fireworks, whatever it be, where we're deploying mountain bikes that we weren't necessarily anticipating, 5K walks, anything like that. We also have directed patrols. which we'll put out in the summertime. If we're having issues up at, let's say, Simons Park or Rohannes, we'll deploy the bike units and send them down there to deal with any of the issues that are going on there. Most recently, we've had some issues up at Simons Park. We'll deploy plainclothes officers up into that type of situation. Walking beats, and the majority of it is probably late arrests and late incidents, which carry over into another shift, where you have to hold the officers and they're eligible for the overtime. And then any other community and school events that we feel we need to add on extra people, we'll take it from there.
All right. Let's see if I had one other question here. This is probably too picky, I don't even mention, but under the uniform allowance, some of the itemizations in the left-hand side, like for the academy clothing, 4 uniforms at $4,000 apiece, the subtotal doesn't multiply out to be the current request.
5,500.
It matches last year's request, but not current year, so it's either uniforms are more expensive or, well, it's probably the most likely thing.
I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing where you're seeing that.
So, I don't know what page number it is. The uniform, under special accounts, 210, uniform allowance, that block of numbers.
Yep.
Second from the bottom is academy clothing. And on the left-hand side, it says 4 at $4,000, but the current request is for $22,000. So it just doesn't, the math doesn't work, so we,
Okay.
Well, the prior request, Roger, would have been 4 at 4,000,
right.
and they may have not fixed the 4,000. That's what it looks like.
This is second to last page in our.
Okay, all right, so I see it.
Second, yeah, there it is.
The note is probably, well.
I guess it's, I'm not picking on the particular number. I
No.
guess what I'm asking for is
It doesn't
make
check.
sure you go back through all the details.
So,
so they add up.
yes, that's most likely what it is I didn't change over next to in the parentheses there. But I know I've got to budget out the 22,000 for who's coming on.
Yep. Oh, and then, kind of a typical question about the cost of gasoline. I know that the DPW makes a recommendation about what price, and they base it off of the state, some averages in the state bid stuff. I'm a little surprised it's level funded, but maybe I don't really have a question. Seems like a lot of money, but I know we need the gas, so. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'll second Sonia's motion.
Chris,
So I was just curious, so it's good to see that we have Narcan on hand. Is it something that we've had enough over the past year, we need to get more of? Do you feel that we continue to have enough on hand?
So we have enough on hand. What we do is every year we update the prescription through Dr. Muse, who's the medical doctor assigned to the Municipal Police Training Committee, and we always have enough on hand. So we track those by log, so as soon as they get down to a certain percentage, we have a detective who handles that, and he will immediately order more, so we have plenty on hand.
Then second, if you don't mind. How many total cruisers do we have? And if you remind me, is it 3 cruisers per year that we're usually looking to replace?
So, yes, we are looking to replace 3 a year. Right now, we have 30 cruisers. 12 of those are marked, and primarily 9 of those are what we call line cars. They're the predominant 24/7, 365.
you all set, Chris?
I think so.
I got one follow-up question.
Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This might be for Paul, but on the medical insurance, we budget 40,000. Is that, so we're self-insuring there? Medical insurance for the police department? They don't come under the accommodated account for other,
It actually can't be all of them.
For public safety departments, for officers and firefighters injured on duty, we have to pay their medical bills directly.
right. But do we self-insure? What,
100% self-insured.
right,
yes.
okay, and
Maybe it can be enough.
it's not actually insurance, it's just a budget?
It's just a budget to pay bills, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And one last thing, like, if I may, Mr. Chairman. Related to occupancy and gasoline and all of this utility type stuff, we do go out to bid for electric and fuel, am I correct?
Electric, natural gas go out to bid. They're typically 5-year contracts, so we're in the, getting towards the end of some favorable contracts. The gas and diesel is purchased off the state contract as it comes in to Boston Harbor on the freighter.
Okay, so that's just an annual event. We get whatever the state's getting for a fuel price?
Yes.
Okay, a lot of people have asked about this on occupancy and fuel and whatnot, but over last year, if anything, it may have gone down, fuel.
Fuel seems to have gone down a little bit from the highs from last year, and again, on the occupancy, we're still within the confines of some relatively favorable 5 years ago bid type rates. So.
And that, I know this is a little off, but we'll get to it. The school department uses your same contract for electric, for natural gas?
Yes.
Right, okay, thank you.
Roger, you had a follow-up?
Oh, just to follow up on the Narcan, does it expire? Does it have expiration dates on that particular?
I don't have the answer to that. I believe it does, but I'm not sure what the shelf life is on that.
Okay, I was just remembering that, well, the fire department has a bunch more medicines in the ambulances, and these definitely expire.
Right, and we try to keep our numbers manageable to what we'll use, and I believe for that reason.
Okay, well, I hope the use is low, but
It is.
thank you.
Chris?
So big fan that the mental health clinician is part of the police force, and I noticed that half of it's offset by ARPA. Should we expect next year to the other half be rolled in, or will we continue to have some ARPA funds used for that? I'm just wondering, hopefully this position will stay permanent, and at some point we're going to need to expect that to roll into the budget.
So my understanding is ARPA funds will be expended by the end of this year, so next year I would be looking to keep her into the budget full-time.
And one more, if you don't mind. And then, can you just give us a little snippet on how that position is being used, if there's any collaboration in the schools going on?
Sure.
And how it's benefited the force?
Sure. So she's been outstanding. Just this year alone, she's had 152 new referrals. That's up from 119 just last year. She works a lot of outside referrals as well. So a lot of times what she's going to get is real time from the police department. A call for service comes in, she's there and she can help out. There's times we're able to do a co-response where we put her in the cruiser, she comes out with us. But then we have also got other town departments that have sent over referrals. For instance, in 2022, the fire department, we had 9 from them, 5 from youth and families, 4 from the schools, 2 from Shawshene Tech alone, 4 from Council on Aging, and the list goes on. And then there are about 7 other police departments who've called over to use her as a resource. One of the things that we're seeing this year, we had a traumatic call over at one of the local grocery stores over on the Middlesex Turnpike this year where somebody tragically had passed away. They called us and we sent her over as a mental health resource for their staff. So it's not that we don't just keep her within the confines of the building. She's a community asset and she's been tremendous. She's put us way ahead of the curve. She's willing to help anybody, and she's done made tremendous gains, making inroads in every town department. Thank you.
On a staffing level, it's good. I mean, it's great that we have a 0.34% because, guys at higher salaries retired, I assume. But now, did that happen, was that accelerated, or is that a pretty standard, like, have we had more retirees? Are we going to have a fairly large cohort of new guys and women, men and women, as they move up? We're going to see more of a balloon in this, just dealing with that, and so in 15 years, we're going to kind of have a big number of people that have all started. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, and it is cyclical. Like when I came on, nobody retired for 5, 6, 7 years, and then all of a sudden, we hit a boom, and that's kind of what we've had happen. And the people who are tending to retire right now are higher-end brass command staff, which allows us to bring people in to backfill them at a lower rate of pay. What we've also done was able to move around some of the specialists, jobs, where that eliminated some of the need for night differential and some of the other perks. So I would expect that this isn't going to continue year to year, but certainly this year we're able to manage it.
I'm curious, how many vacancies do you have at this point?
So right now, we're authorized for 68. We currently have 65 on board, and 2 are ready to go to the academy in July. And we also have the 68th position. He is currently in the academy at Merrimack College, and he's going to onboard with us sometime middle of May.
Right, so you already got folks to fill all 3.
We will be, but right over the horizon, we have a few ready to go, so.
All right. Any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second already. Thank you for that. We have no one remote, so we can vote by hand tonight. Don't vote yet, no, give it away. Let me just get the right line here.
I'm just moving, I'm moving the process along.
Well done. All right, this is for $10,128,000. Let me start over. $10,127,029. All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. Very good. Opposed, abstained. All right, that is 13-0-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Chief.
All right, our next budget is the fire department, which is account 220. Do we have a subcommittee report, Mike?
Yes. So we'll kind of do the same process. I'll go through the budget cover sheet first. Welcome the Chief Andy Conity and Assistant Chief Steve McLean. The overall budget percentage increase requested this year, 5.76%. As we'll see, that was impacted by a couple of things, particularly overtime. We'll talk about that. Last year's increase was much smaller, 1.89%. So going down to reasons budget is over guideline. Listed here, salary increases, that's normal. Increased overtime costs was kind of a big one. Then we got retirement, vacancy costs kind of planned to overtime. New software maintenance costs and gasoline costs increase, at a lower level also contributed. You see here some of the areas we'll dive into: overtime, contracted services, materials and supplies. No personnel changes, no movements between full-time and part-time. No anticipated future staffing changes, although depends how you define that. There's a lot of changes happening. Warrant articles expected for this year, so we have some warrant articles that we'll talk a little bit about in this budget overview, but really we'll tackle that one the next time we do warrants. Capital improvements through borrowing. The town tower ladder is listed there. You can see the department's done a nice job attaining different grants here. That certainly helps. Yeah, and then the line item requests over 10%. We'll dig into these. So now taking a look at the regular numbers on the top sheet here, we see full-time salaries up 2%, part-time up 6.62%. So the part-time, I believe there was no contract in place for a couple of years, so when that contract was settled, there was some back pay that came out of negotiated settlements that drove that increase of 6.62%. On the overtime side of things, overtime's up 29.41%, and we did have a lengthy discussion on this. And just as a kind of a reminder to everybody that the way that the shift staffing works in the fire department, there's a full staffing is 15, minimum staffing is 13, meaning you always have to have at least 13 people on a shift. That's just contractual. So if you're, if you're at 15 and you have 3 people out, that drops you down to 12. You have to have someone stay, and that's where overtime kicks in. Overtime is at a time and a half rate, so you're paying an extra 50% for people on overtime. The issues that are driving the increase, particularly this year in overtime, are mostly, I'd say, twofold. One is retirements, well, maybe threefold. You got retirements, you got some people have left the Burlington force and moved to another area, another force, and then you have injuries, long-term or short-term. So when I started off talking about this, and I asked Andy what was going on, he said, well, first we had a retirement, then we had another retirement, then someone left, and a dispatcher left, and another person retired, so it was just kind of like boom, boom, boom. These things were happening. And it's unfortunate because at the beginning of last year, I guess for the first month of the year, they were fully staffed, but that only lasted a month, and then things started happening that impacted that. And compounding that is the difficulty in getting new applicants when positions are posted. So the chief went through a series of advertisements trying to fill positions. First, they tried to fill the first 2 positions that left. They only got 1 applicant. Then someone else left. They kicked that advertisement up to 3, and they got 2 applicants. Then another person left. They said, okay, we have 4 openings, got 3 applicants. 1 wasn't suitable. So it's been a struggle to find applicants. I guess it's sort of a symptom of the pandemic a little bit, to a certain degree, I guess, where, I don't know, there's just not the demand anymore for fire jobs. So it's just, I guess, happening in the industry. Other towns are also struggling. So out of those 4 vacancies, they filled 2, and then since then, 2 more people have retired. So, we're kind of in this trying to catch up mode and struggling to do it. There's been some other issues with long-term injuries and other illnesses, that are, making matters worse. A lot of times in the past, someone would be out for a couple of months, but this year the injuries have been worse. People are out much longer. When we met 2 weeks ago, Cheyenne and I, to review this, Chief said, here's our staffing currently. We have one group at 15 people, 1 at 14, 1 at 13, and 1 at 12. So the group that has 12 automatically is going to have to, every time they go in, they're going to have someone from the previous shift remain, and they're going to have overtime on that shift. So I guess I didn't think of it that night, and I sent Andy an email today, and I said, well, can you shift people from the 15, we have 15, over to the 12 to at least cover that? And he said, yeah, we've been doing some of that, but it's so volatile. For example, that one that I said was 15 2 weeks ago, that one is now at 13. So it's just a constant kind of shifting and moving of people. That's even trying to balance things is not as easy as you might think. As we know, we're hiring only paramedics, so a little bit harder maybe for finding the right people for this. Applicants out there, they're interviewing at multiple towns, so they're kind of just putting their names in different towns, seeing which one's got the best offers, that type of thing. Another, I guess, unique thing, or maybe not unique, but it's occurring in Burlington, is that when a hire comes on, let's see if I get this right, we start paying them when they start at the academy. Is that correct?
Yes.
So other towns, and there's typically a 6-month wait to get into the academy. There's lots of different tests and things that happen in between, and then finally, okay, ready for the academy, 6-month wait. Other towns are starting to pay people and put them to work right when they come in, before they even go to the academy. So, that's a difference from Burlington and other towns. May not be helping. I guess the net of it is it's a problem. It's not going away anytime soon. Expectation next year, there will be 6 people retiring between July and September. So we're already looking at trying to fill, for a couple of spots we're missing now, so looking to bring on like 8 people. So that's the overtime discussion we had, and it, kind of made it clear to me that the type of problem we're having, and it's kind of a systemic problem, I think, that is maybe a little bit difficult right now to deal with. So even if you thought we could cut back on overtime if we had more people, can't get them. So that's where it is. Moving down, so contracted services, that's up 20.98%. Flipping to the detail on that, down towards the bottom of that contracted services table, there was a $25,000 increase in the fire data management category. That's the same thing that popped up on the police budget as well. That's the Pro Phoenix system software and support fee. The other notable increase there was medical evaluations for new hires went from $6,000 to $9,270. That's at that level because we're planning on hiring, hoping to hire 8 people that will need those medical evaluations. Continuing on through the expenses, the next notable thing would be materials and supplies. That's up 14.25%. So going to the detail on that, that was materials and supplies. Oh, yeah, here it is. So this was the gas, oil, and tire line item went up $33,000. And part of this was because the previous year, well, it's listed here at $50,000, but that was actually reduced, I think, by Chief Patterson. He took $10,000 off of that, and I think shifted it somewhere else last year, so it was maybe a little lower than it should have been last year. And then, of course, prices on oil-based products and so forth have gone up, so that's the other part of that increase. So that kind of drives numbers in the budget. I do have a little bit of information, although there was some things that came out, I sent out just this morning. Apologize for getting those out late. There's some detail on overtime, if you need to go into that. There was also, we had a discussion on the advanced life support and how that's going. There was some questions on, how is that working out, expenses versus revenues and so forth. So I forwarded along an email that John Denizio put together. And looking at the email, the particulars for ALS in terms of added expenses by offering ALS has been estimated to be, roughly in the range of $375,000 per year. Includes added stipends, from EMT to medic, supplies, materials, Leahy rounds, equipment, contracted services. On the revenue side, it's projected that going to ALS has increased revenues between $420,000 to $500,000. So we're bringing in more now than we're spending additionally to offer this service. In the past, we worked with Armstrong, and the town would get 40% of the money from this, and 60% went to Armstrong. now it's going 100% to the town because, we're offering the services ourselves. So the money comes into, money's billed by a third-party billing company when patients are dropped off at the hospital. Sometimes we collect information from them right in the ambulance. Other times, we'll go in and talk to someone at the hospital, and typically people have been to that hospital previously, so they have the insurance information. But in any case, as much of that information as possible is captured by the firefighter medic on a tablet. They put that in, then that gets downloaded when the shift comes back, downloaded onto the servers at the fire station. Somebody does some QA to make sure that things are filled out properly, and that goes off to a third-party billing organization. They send out the bills to the various insurance companies, and the money comes back to the town. It doesn't come back to the fire department, it goes back to town hall. So that's kind of the process there. And the balance in that fund that has accumulated since going to ALS is $2.2 million. And this represents the full income from all ambulance receipts during that time frame. So that's good. That's building up, and that will actually be used to fund some of the fire warrants and potentially to cover a portion of the overtime expenses as well. So, in case you were wondering, just kind of a little side note on the progress of the Advanced Life Services operation. But I think that covers the budget, and Shine and I reviewed that 2 weeks ago, and subcommittee approved 2-0.
Great. Welcome, Chief and Assistant Chief. Would you like to add anything to that?
No, it's very thorough. I think you got everything.
Okay.
Appreciate
great.
that.
Do we have questions? Chris?
Just on your staffing levels, who determines that? Is that contractual?
Yeah, we have a minimum of 13, and every shift has 15 on it.
And that's by contract. I mean, that's not subjective on.
Right.
David?
So it appears that your department request was for $1.9 million in overtime?
Yes.
And they cut $500,000
Yes.
off of that. So there must have been some discussion. I'd like to
No
hear about the
discussion
discussion.
at
I mean, that's an
No
enormous
negotiable.
number. So do you think you're going to make it?
To be honest, I asked for more, and I thought we needed more, and I said, I can't come in at over 2 million, so 1.9 I came in. And they said, we can't do that. Let's hope for a better year. So,
Your dad's coming.
Yeah, thoughts on that, John?
I like Mike doing all the talking. David, I just want to add to that we budgeted in the operating budget what we thought we could afford with the guidelines. And then we're also, you'll see when we talk about the other warrant articles, there's a couple of warrant articles to transfer money from the receipts reserve for ambulance for both an issue this year and to help offset next year.
Okay.
So we'll get closer to the request and more in line with what, we hope will happen as far as they talked about all the issues that are going on there with the structural issue, contractual issue with the minimum manning, with the rash of injuries we've had and vacancies. We're hopefully not always going to have injuries and vacancies. So we think that this year is the worst we've seen. Hopefully it's the worst we'll have, but so you'll see another article hoping to offset some of that.
Thank you.
thank you.
Don't go away, John.
Yeah, I think we're going to need you again. Actually, I did have a question that might be appropriate for you, John. It seems like, given that the ambulance receipts are operational revenue, it seems like it would make total sense to have that always planned on directly offsetting operating costs. Is that the intention? I see you're planning to do it over time, but just as a policy, is that where you plan to go?
Yeah, so just a little bit of history is that we do have some that, so at the time when we were doing BLS and someone else was providing the ALS, all of the ambulance receipts were a regular, local receipt for us, just a regular general revenue. They go in to help offset the general fund. When we started planning to provide the ALS on our own, we said, okay, we need to capture the additional receipts we're gonna have, put them somewhere so we can help offset the costs, and let's take some time to figure out what those costs are. And, you know, until now, those costs have really just been baked into our budget, and, you know, we've been able to absorb them. But now with things like an ambulance coming up, we're gonna buy the ambulance out of there, and now, the number, when we talk about the warrant articles, we'll talk about how we came with the number that we're suggesting we take from the receipts, and in Mike's explanation from the email, that's basically where it come from, what has that additional cost been, that we can, you know, fairly say, this is an additional cost for providing this services, we're gonna use these dedicated funds for that. So I'm not sure if I answered your original
Yeah, I
question.
think so, and presumably including those additional costs were like the paramedic stipends and things
Correct.
like that. Okay.
Yep. You know, we don't have like drill down on every piece and say, is it ALS or BLS? It's, you know, the big things. It's the increased stipends that everybody got, especially the paramedics. It's rounds, it's things like that, you know, supplies.
Okay, great. Sonia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, can I ask you the piece that Mike was talking about other communities bringing people on before the academy and putting them to work, for lack of a better term. Does that count in their is everybody at 50 in our communities, as a rule of thumb, at the same count for each complement? And does that count toward their 15? Is that their justification, or is that just their attraction of trying to bring people on and attract them because they're applying to so many different towns at once? Like, are we competitive, I guess is what I'm asking you.
Yeah, so they bring someone on and put them right to work. They're not a firefighter 1-2 unless they already have it.
I see.
We were fortunate enough to hire someone just recently that was firefighter 1-2, so
Great.
he's going right to work.
Great.
The other guy we hired, he's going through the academy right now. We were able to get him into an early academy. So that was a little bit fortunate as well. But to answer your question, we need contractually a firefighter 1-2 to be able to respond to fires because they're trained in that. Other places may hire them and put them on the ambulance, and that's all they do. But we don't have that language, so, and it can be difficult as a shift commander to have, 12 guys on duty and one guy
Can't really.
you gotta babysit.
Understood.
You gotta watch out where he's going, so, there is that issue that, other towns deal with. So, I can recall Chelmsford had a guy brand new, and they had, an apartment fire, and this guy was going up on the ladder, rescuing a woman over the ladder on his first day. And while, yeah, that's possible, it's not recommended that they don't have the training.
Of course, right. I'm just wondering if there's anything we can, is there something that can be done to help the vacancies? I'm sure I know that there's a demand, obviously, in all the communities. Is there anything that could be done that helps that? When they're looking at all different communities and applying to a number of communities at once, do you see us as competitive, like when we kind of compare ourselves to other communities?
Yeah, so contract-wise, when we compare ourselves to other communities, I think we're, very competitive. It's just that starting off point. If you're a young, eager firefighter or potential firefighter and you get offered a job in Burlington or offered a job in Malden, and, they'll start you right away in Malden, they're like, oh, bird in the hand, I'm going to go where I'm going to start first. Some of them. The fellow that we got from, that was already firefighter 1-2, he had that option. He was looking at different towns, and he ended up with us. So we're fortunate to get him.
Absolutely.
We can entice them with our new fire station.
Yeah, it's a good community, right?
Mr. Chairman, could I just make one point since I'm already up here?
Certainly.
When you were going through the detail, there's a change from what was requested to what the supervisory approved, and it's in 111F, so it will probably stand out a little bit, but in the detail, it doesn't reflect the change. So if you go through the detail for 111F and it says requested 72,000, you come out on the main page, the supervisory was only 42,000. That's what I was getting at earlier. Hopefully, we're not going to continue to have all the injuries we've had.
The 111F is the injury payment.
Correct.
Steve?
This is, I guess, a picky little question, but curious. On special accounts under termination buyback, you have $10. I'm just curious as to what that's actually used for.
Keep the account open.
Maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's sort of a holdback to how they used to budget years ago, where it's more or less a placeholder. We don't want to forget about this potential. If it would zero it out, eventually it would drop off. So I think the other one that it sort of probably still remains, or it used to remain anyway, was in the building department budget. They used to budget $10 in the event that they would have to take down an abandoned structure or something if the town had to take down an unsafe structure. But again, it's a little bit of a throwback, a little bit of a placeholder. Like, we don't want to lose the concept of this, even though it happens relatively infrequently.
Thank you.
Chris, did you have some?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. So I noticed there's the continued 4K in public relations. Is that used for a firm, or how is that $4,000 used for public relations?
Yeah, we contract with a public relations firm.
And then can you explain what the wellness program is and what is done with firefighters?
So the wellness program is a state mandated program where I think people hired after 1996 are required to maintain a certain fitness level, and so that, along with that, they're given a $250 for a gym membership or exercise equipment on their own.
And I think this is more than just a general statement, and this is not something you're not going to be surprised at, but with all the overtime also comes the injuries, and so those are going to go hand in hand, and that's definitely going to be a concern and a strain on our firefighters continual, and looking at the price differential here, it makes me continue to think of we could be hiring more firefighters, to be able to offset that. Mm-hmm. All things that we've talked about, all things that we've addressed here, but making sure that, our firefighters aren't taking on the whole burden of this, and looking at the things to figure out how to make us more competitive, to be able to continue to recruit and continue to grow, would all be because, we started to lose to longer and longer injuries. We're going to continue to be at the same place. So.
We've discussed the addition of more firefighters as well.
For a long time, many years.
If only we could hire them.
Right.
Yeah.
Roger?
Two observations about manning levels. As I recall, a few years ago, the base of the manning level requirement is national standards for firefighting. They are written into the contracts, but it's not a freestanding set number that just got produced out of nowhere. And then maybe a little pessimism. Injuries, as long as I've been doing this, we've had injuries. Mm-hmm. So thinking that they're going to be reduced mm-hmm. is, maybe you've got the statistics, but there will always be injuries.
I think, maybe not the number of injuries, but the severity of the injuries that we've had. We've been very unlucky.
Yeah.
We had 3 guys out for a year, severe injuries, but they all came back, and unfortunately, it wasn't too long after those guys came back and got other guys go out. So it's, and like talking with Mike the other day, we had that 15-man shift. We're waiting for this guy to finish his training and put him in on that 12-man shift. And he suggested, well, why don't we move a guy over now? Just from that day to this, 2 guys on that shift went out, so.
I fully support the health program and getting and keeping the firefighters healthy.
Frank, did you have something?
I did. I don't want to beat a dead horse. Obviously, the smoking gun here is the amount of the overtime and the difficulty getting new staffing in quickly and on the schedule you want. So, it's pretty obvious. Anything you can do to almost overcommit to staffing, get people in even ahead of when you actually have to fill the position, would pay off.
We start, most of the people give us at least a year's notice.
Right, so and at that
So
point,
we know we can start calling.
okay, so,
But once you commit to someone, it's still a 6-month wait for them to get through the academy. Get to the academy, 2 months to get through. So it's
I understand, and it's a hard problem, but all I'm saying is get as much lead as you can, because this is a big enough problem that would almost, you'd rather have the other problem where you've got a bit of a full spigot of people coming in, maybe even 1 or 2 more than you think you might actually get to in your 6 to 12 months. But that just doesn't seem to be happening. So you really have to work on that. And you know that. So that's the beating of the dead horse, I think. I would say anything we can do to support you with fitness programs, especially for the kind of work that you do, it's built into what you need to have, the very best you can get, no matter what age somebody is. Just being in better shape will help them be safer, not get hurt, if at all possible. So are we speeding up, or, that's the wrong word, are we making deeper the fitness programs that are now available?
I notice more and more of the guys in the gyms in the station. We have a small gym at the headquarters and a large gym at the station too. There's a lot more guys utilizing that. It's, when I came on, we didn't even have a gym.
Yeah, so that really is, I think that's actually very, very important to almost require it, to really push that through leadership, example, coaching, training. So I think that's really critical. The one thing that did come up here that I don't think's been mentioned exactly, it looks like we're going to shift some of the revenues from some places, particularly the ALS, in order to offset some warrant type stuff. That's what you're thinking of doing?
One warrant, so buy an ambulance with it.
Yeah.
And then the other 2, I just said they're a warrant, but they would be to offset the operating budget.
Okay, so I know you've thought about this, and so I could be off base here, but I would think we would be way better off shifting that always to straight operating money and let free cash, and if it's a big enough item, I don't know how the fire truck, the ladder truck's gonna come through, but, borrowing and free cash, if possible, because we can't use we don't want to use free cash to offset any operating money, and this could help more than maybe we are using it. I wondered about that. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, so we can definitely do that. I think that the.
You have your reasons, I'm sure, and I probably don't appreciate the game of chess you're playing with it, but generally it looks to me like any kind of a revenue upside that can be used towards operating when you've got operating pressure should go directly to the operating side, the way I look at it anyway.
Yeah, I think when we talk about the warrant articles, it'll be a little bit more clear about the amount that we're saying. We're basically saying we'll take all of the additional revenue that we can contribute to the cost for ALS and use that amount to offset
But some of that, a lot of that, like an ambulance is a direct cost to ALS. You must, well, maybe it isn't, I don't know. You probably don't run the ambulance any harder, but it might be more full up. It might be a more expensive machine to equip. But that's, you know, that's, to me, that's capital, not operating, unless it's a consumable. You know, I understand. I don't want to belabor it, but it does stick out to me. I really wondered about that. And the last piece of this, I think, is that, you know, the services that we provide are probably still dominated by rescue and, you know, life and that sort of thing, not fire suppression. Is that continuing to be, is it moving further and further out of fire suppression? Or are we kind of in the steady state now?
I think it's generally the same.
The same.
When you talk, you know, all EMS versus everything else that we do.
Right.
It's the same. You know, we may not have the same number of fires per.
But it was moving pretty rapidly for a while away from suppression and towards EMS, and it sounds like it's kind of an even equation now, although it's still not, the EMS still dominates
Yes.
the calls.
Yeah, they always do.
But from a staffing point of view, we staff universally. If we hire somebody, they're equally qualified for either truck for whatever mission,
Yes.
correct? Across the board. And that makes the most sense. It certainly is the most flexible and fungible in terms of when a shift is put together, maybe even thrown together sometimes. You don't have to worry about, well, who's got what license and who's got this license. They're all equal. And I guess I think that is the best way for us to do it, especially since it's dominated by EMS. We need that anyway. So, okay, all right, thank you. Keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, I want to push a little more on what Frank was talking about with injuries and physical fitness. So it's one thing to have a gym and kind of have here's an access and you can work out. What are their opportunities for ongoing training for biomechanics and ergonomics, and this is the best way to step out of a truck and the best way to step in, and this is how, you know, reaching, lifting, bend, all the things where people act, you know, really get hurt. You guys do very physical things, but some of them are very predictable. And so I know in some industries, they spend a lot of time, they practice, here's the mechanics of doing X, Y, and Z, so that when you're then in a stressful situation, you do it that way. And I'm just wondering, does that exist? Are there outside companies that will come in and work with, you know, kind of set up systems to train on that?
Yeah, and we could hire a company to come in and consult and show us how to lift and move patients, and, you know, all of the apparatus, the ambulances, the equipment are all built with OSHA standards, so that you're not stepping too high or, you know, and you know, even when a guy is stepping off a truck the right way, he could.
Oh, absolutely.
He could get injured.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's because they're doing it wrong, but every little thing helps, and
Yeah.
every commercial truck is built to OSHA standards, but a lot of businesses put a lot of time into, this is the best way to protect yourself, and so just wondering.
We could look at that.
Chris?
So I apologize if this was in the recap, but with the fire data management for Pro Phoenix, we went from 20,000 to 45. Do we know what next year's cost is going to be?
I think it's gonna be an additional.
Increase? 'Cause my only thought is.
It's gonna be more.
Is there a way to include this into like a 3-year, you know, and using, I believe we can use warrant articles for like a 3-year contract, but is there a way to roll this so that we're not increasing all the time and getting into a, you know, a fixed cost?
Yeah, so the first year, it's not up and running, so that year is free. What we're paying for is the original setup, and then some, excuse my lack of technology.
Integration.
Between different features. So This represents the integration of some different programs. The following year will be the first year of the additional funds, additional annual service and maintenance.
Because that was just a thought, because if we're looking at something that's gonna continue to increase, is there a way to roll into a 3-year contract rather than the continual, process there? So just trying to figure out, you know, and you had answered some questions last year when I had some other ones about this, because I was very interested in it, but just trying to figure out, you know, it's important, but is there a way to save us money on a longer contract or expected costs year to year?
Cheyenne, did you have something?
Just a quick question about the hiring process. If to decrease overtime cost, would it make sense to offer a higher starting salary for oncoming firefighters?
Well,
I mean, you mentioned.
we'd have to talk with the administration and the union, and it's all negotiated.
No, because you mentioned
We're
that.
gonna have to pay for John's heart attack.
Great idea.
You want his phone number?
We got the right people here.
No, because you mentioned that a lot of times, you know, people will go to other towns, other communities because the starting offer is better.
I think we're competitive pay-wise. It's whether or not, you know, if I were to offer you a job to start in 6 months or now.
Right.
So date, not rate.
Right. I
Start
see.
date,
Okay.
yeah.
I see. All right. Thank you.
Roger.
So the 6-month delay to get into the academy, whose problem is that? I know it's not yours, but who's trying to fix the problem that there's not enough academy capacity
So
to train the people we need?
The Fire Academy had started off with just a campus in Stowe. Then they opened one in Springfield, and the last year or so, they opened another one in Bridgewater. So they are doing their very best to expand their recruit training programs. But they are up against the budget as well, the state budget. So when we send someone there, it's no cost to us. It's part of the Department of Fire Services budget. So we don't really have control over how many they can put through. They've played with the number of weeks that they run a recruit program in order to get more people through. And then a lot of the chiefs were complaining that it was too quick and they weren't hitting all the spots. So, you know, a lot of the guys that going through today have never used a chainsaw, have never thrown a ladder, so we're getting really green people. You know, everyone plays video games nowadays instead of going out climbing trees, so.
Yeah, fire that way. All right.
That's, you know, the state is doing their best. What we did do is, currently we have a guy in the Boston Academy. They opened up a Metro Fire Academy, and we were able to get a guy into that. So as soon as he was hired, he went to the academy. And the guy that we hired, he's a call firefighter from Linfield, so he already has certifications. He'll be starting on a shift next week, so.
So we should call our legislatures and get them to nag on the budget, huh?
Yep,
It's
whenever
not the only thing we can do from this end.
Whenever I have the opportunity, I send a message to the legislature to keep funding the fire academy.
Great, thank you. Move to approve?
Second.
Okay, any further questions?
Wow. I'm surprised they didn't second it.
I did use a chainsaw yesterday, by the way.
Wanna be- Yes.
I hear there's some training involved.
Did you use it to cut up a ladder?
Use a chainsaw, I can't lift it.
This is for $9,956,708. And show of hands for yes. Okay, and opposed? Abstain? All right, that's 1300. Thank you very much, but don't go anywhere. We have one more for you. Okay, next up is emergency management. That is account 291. Do we have a report, Mike?
We do.
Excellent.
So the overall budget percent increase requested 0%. It's kind of been on the same budget for a few years now. It's hit kind of steady state, so we're not seeing any increases in the requests. Everything else is pretty much NA. We, down towards the bottom, we are getting a performance grant for $6,500 that will be used to purchase automated calibration stations. It's like a carbon monoxide meter that needs to be calibrated. So that will be used to purchase those. If we look at the cover sheet page, the main budget page, it's all 0%. We do see $8,100 is set aside materials and supplies to, that's for the calibration stations, but the grant will pay for that, so when the grant comes in, it'll be turned back over to the town. I don't think there was anything else really of note for this budget. It's fairly simple. So Shine and I voted on this 2-0 in support.
Anything additional, Chief?
No?
Okay. What questions do we have? Chris?
Just curious, so if we were to need to open a shelter, what buildings or building would we use?
So for a shelter, we have the Kelly Murray wing.
And then do you want to just talk about the medical reserve corps and how that can be utilized?
Yeah, so the Medical Reserve Corps is a combination of us and the Board of Health. No, emergency management, it's not really fire. It's emergency management and the Board of Health. And we do, they do some sheltering operations as well. They helped out with the vaccination of people during COVID. So it's all local people that assist their town.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. All right, this is for $23,600. Those in favor? Opposed? Abstained? That's 1300. Thank you very much, Chief, Assistant Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Just put that there. All right, before we move on to minutes, was there anything else that we need to cover tonight? I think so. Okay. All right, we have minutes from last week, March 22nd. I didn't see any comments on that. Any comments now? No? Okay. Have a motion to approve on that?
So
please?
moved, Mr.
Thank you.
Chair.
All right, this is to approve the March 22nd minutes. Those in favor, yes? I'm gonna have to count this time. 1, 2,
I know, sorry.
looks like 10, I think. Abstained? Let me just get this one down. Keep your hands up, please.
3.
Sonia, David, Mike. On that, okay. And opposed? Good. That is 1003. All right, so coming up, we have a few things. So I sent around the list of warrant articles. We don't have any detail on it or amounts or anything, but at least you know the titles. You can guess the rest. I'll forward those on as soon as I get them, obviously. I saw, so I spoke to Brad and David. There's going to be some swaps between Town Hall 1 and Town Hall 2. Am I correct in assuming that everyone else is okay with what's on their list? Yes, a lot of DPW rec ones there. You're happy, Roger?
Happy?
Okay, look at that smile. All right, good. All right, very good. All right, so there are about 66 total articles, so there's a lot to go through. I was thinking so the school warrant articles will cover when the schools are here, but the rest would start after that. The week after that is April 19th, which is during school vacation week. I'd like to start then if possible, but I only want to do it if people are going to be here, obviously. Is there anyone that won't be able to be Steve?
I won't be.
Okay, no Steve. Is there anyone else that won't be here then? So 3 of us may not be here, it sounds like. Is everyone else?
Oh, I know I won't be here.
I'm optimistic. You may change your mind.
I'm leaving town.
You're pretty confident, all right. Will everyone else be able to make it? All right, I'll go through the list and see if it fits in 2 nights. I'm guessing it's, well, we have the schools pulled out, but,
You'd want to check if the department head will be here too.
and see whether
That and
departments can be here also.
The people that are out may own some of those warrant articles, so you could automatically move those.
They would be bad choices to do that.
Right.
So, so just to
How
be
many have you got, Doug? Oh, jeez. I'm on your committee.
So Steve
Why
is
you
fortunately doing the school before then.
Oh, so
And
it
who was
works
the
out.
third one that I missed that wasn't going to be here?
It might not be.
And Chris, okay. So the good news is you're both on schools, right? So, so it may work out. All right, so I'll figure out the scheduling and with departments to see if we can start then or not. Yes,
So, John, I'm gonna be out the 26th. I know
Okay,
it's a little further in the future, but
good to know.
don't put DPW and rec on that night. Unless Sonia went, you out. No, you can do
I
it
won't
all.
be here that day either.
This is gonna get hard.
You're going to conveniently be out also?
Oh, no, I really am. I'm away the last week of April, that's true.
Oh,
26th
the
to
warrant
the
articles.
1st.
Oh, so you're both out, all right, so that won't work
That
well.
was definitely out.
So definitely no DPW
We
now.
always do, yeah.
All right, I'll send out, yes, Steve.
No, I just wanted to remind for the school subcommittee meetings, we have one on 4, which is at Billerica High School for the Shawshene budget, and then on 4/6, we'll be meeting at 6 o'clock in the small conference room in the superintendent's office for the operating budget and accommodated accounts. And then we'll take the votes. If we don't vote that night, we'll vote right before the meeting on the 12th at 6 o'clock.
Okay, I did forward on from Steve, your budgets with the schools. There's some big numbers there that are big percentages also, so those would really be worth reviewing. We'll see if they get beat down or not.
Just a reminder that they will be showing like a 6% over the budget, or 6% instead of the 3.75. And on the night before, the school committee will meet and actually vote the budget, and at that point in time, it'll be at guidelines, so once they figure out what they're going to remove, they'll give us a change list of all the stuff they cut, and then I'll forward it out to the full committee.
Okay, and is Shawshene reworking their budget also, that you know of?
Not that I know of, but we'll be having an interesting meeting on the 4th.
Right, they've come in with a preliminary large number that,
The overall budget was 6.9, but our assessment's at 5.
right, still big.
Still big, but
I
not
know
the
there's
full.
been some feedback on that, so we'll see how that pans out. Okay, Frank?
So relative to where there might be pressure points in these budgets, the one thing that at least I don't think I understand it, we don't know how much anything that isn't in guideline, or even if the whole scorecard is above guideline, I'm making this up, we don't know how much of that maps into raise and appropriate versus offset funding, because we don't know all the sources. We don't know what the cherry sheet estimate is, we don't know what the excise tax estimate is, there's a whole bunch of them. So how do we know what kind of tax burden we're looking at as we trade this stuff off?
Well, I mean, you know this better than I. Obviously, administration has made estimates of where those things are coming in. They're going to take their best shot at it, and as you know, the levy isn't set until, 2 quarters in, when they're more confident of what the revenues are.
Right.
I mean, that's all that can be done, right? I mean, it's all
But I
estimates on
think-
revenue.
You know, I think it would be important for us to understand, based on estimates, when we vote for or against something, not to staff a position, or to staff one that goes over the 375 or whatever it is, what's the impact what's the projected impact to the overall tax rate, commercial and residential? And that I can't figure out.
And that's a fair point. The good news is that would be Town Hall One's purview to perhaps chat with administration and see if we can get a sensitivity analysis of. Thanks, Frank. He stepped right on that one, didn't he? David's over here nodding, no. No, I would think the administration could give a sensitivity analysis of an extra $1 million of expenses likely implies this on the levy.
All right, well, I think
That would
we
be a
all
good
should
question
see
to ask.
that, and we will. I think if you might plant a little note to SAG and John that we're actually looking for that.
Yep. I can give them a hint that that's
I think
coming
that would
along.
make us all a little bit smarter right
This is
now.
what I was trying to ask him about last week.
Well,
He
you
says,
weren't
"We
as
don't do that."
forceful enough.
Well, let's,
And Frank, while
Roger
you're
was
at,
planting the seed for the seed.
and Frank, while you're at it, can you ask about schools being, a couple percentage points over and what that will do?
Well, I'm pretty sure when you get to your subcommittee meetings, and then we finally get the first cut at this, we're gonna know how much is over that they're asking for, and how much is over that they're not even asking for, but what it is. Because it's a lot.
Right.
Right, it's significant.
And then we can map that into the impact on the tax rate.
Yeah, I mean, we can be more explicit, and I'll plant this seed with them that, if the budget is $10 million higher than the current number, what does that imply in terms of a levy?
Right.
Their best guess.
in years past, I think there is a back of the envelope type of
Right.
number that says, $1 million in the budget is some number in the tax rate.
Right, we've worked off of that assumption in the past, and it's helpful. We've literally had people come to our meetings and say, "You're killing me, stop raising my taxes." And I don't even know what we're doing to their taxes at the moment.
I don't know, we just spent a lot of money tonight.
That's their fault.
No, it's a very good point. I think you're correct, we should know that if it's not a big deal or if it's a very big deal. That's
Right,
important to know.
it even ties into a little bit this notion of using revenues from advanced life support to go to anything but the general fund may or may not make good sense. I can't tell.
No, I think.
I can't use free cash to hire somebody.
You're.
Suicide.
Your point on that is very similar to one I was trying to make, which is if it's operational revenue, it should go to operating costs.
Especially if there's pressure on the levy.
There's a little bit of a slippery slope there, because the building department brings in a lot of money, and they spend a certain amount of money.
Well, I think that's a little
All right.
different.
Kind of operational.
Well, that's
I
okay.
wouldn't call that operational revenue. It's not, because and I love the building department, but they happen to be at the end of the chain. There's many other departments that are very involved with the things that cause those permits to be bought. You have planning, conservation, a million other things. So, fire and police protection and so forth. So I think that's a little less directly tied, whereas I think an ambulance call where you drive someone to hospital is pretty directly tied to the revenue
I
that
don't know
you
if the
charge.
building inspector doesn't go out. We don't get the fees.
As I say, they're at the end of the chain. It's just as important to do that as all the other steps.
Right.
You're
But
absolutely
at
correct.
least it goes to the general fund, the fees.
Fees go to the general fund, right.
You know, it's for the same reason that we don't allow the tax collector to spend $100 million just because they're the ones who send out the bill and collect the money. They're at the end of the chain. But fair
Thank you.
enough. Chris?
While we're asking for clarification, I'd really want to see the ARPA funds and some of the things that we're spending on, and then what is expected when the money runs out. For example, we have a mental health clinician from fire tonight, potentially expecting $36,000 in that budget. When we look at the school budget, and we will do this and I'll bring it up, we have $763,000 in salaries that are directly connected to ARPA funds that will, I'm guessing they're gonna wanna keep those at some point, are gonna roll into the budgets, and these are gonna be substantial increases because the towns come to expect or enjoy or use these. And so I'd really like to see that analysis from the town of how we spent the money and what is the budget impact over the next 1, 2, 3 years. Because some of these, you know, if the schools are gonna roll all those positions, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 positions next year into that budget that's currently covered by ARPA. I mean, that's $700,000. So I would really like the town to clarify what we use that we're gonna continue, because we know there's been some short-term stuff, there's been stuff we use for the water we've needed, that we've used those funds for, but that is one of the concerns I have for the next 1, 2, and 3 years when this money starts to dry up, and we need to continue with some of these
In
things.
terms of operating use of it.
Yep.
Right.
Right.
Most of it isn't used that way.
You know, and that's always the risk where grants and so
Yep.
forth are used to fund positions. And,
Absolutely.
You know, we've seen that with a lot of things. I think that would be an excellent question for the
which-
school sub to be talking
going to
about
be,
with
trust
the administration.
Yeah, I already got a sense that that was going to be asked.
I'll certainly follow up with town on that side.
Leadership delegates.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's good to know next year with fire, we're definitely looking at a $36,000 increase, and I think all of us agree with the position, but those are the things we have to plan for. Because when they come and say, you know, we're 8% over, well, you knew this 36 was gonna be there, so.
And we knew day one when the mental health clinician was funded entirely by a grant that that was what was going to happen.
Yeah, we need that position.
Yep.
But yes,
We'll pay for it.
you know, I think, you know, with the ARPA funds being such a larger amount, it's a much more dangerous position to be in.
You know, Mr. Chairman, a piece of what's important in that discussion, this anticipatory, you can't judge the merit of, will I fill it in 2 or 3 years when the grants run out, but you can sort of have a pretty good idea. But part of what you're doing is you're letting the public know what we're trying to do going forward. You know, in other words, we oftentimes hear, why do our taxes keep going up? Because we're doing more in many ways. And you need to let them know what we'd be doing more of as we get into it. And certainly, mental health is one of the areas where we're clearly trying to do more that we didn't do in the past.
Right, we're seeing that with police
Right.
and schools also.
Right,
I
exactly.
think that's a big part of the extra
And it
positions.
isn't just for us to know about it, it's for, you know, the community to know about it, that we think we need to support these things, and you need to, you know, help us.
Hopefully our large BCAT audience is paying attention. Sonia?
And maybe more than you think.
So, I agree with you 100% on that. It's about an education process
Yeah.
that has to happen. This is the same conversation we have about the will of the community for what kind of services to continue to have, because it's that same discussion just from a different avenue, right? Like, I mean, how many if we continue to supply level services that the communities come to expect, then we have to understand as a rule of thumb that means that the rates go up. You know, I'm not sure, as much as people understand it, I'm not sure it's completely understood that by the time it's before the Board of Selectmen and the assessors to actually set a tax rate, that decision's been made. I mean, this is not about your selectmen and assessors raising your taxes. It's indicative of votes that happened at town meeting. And I'm not really sure it is, right? I mean,
No, I was gonna make equivalence to raising the debt ceiling.
I
Yeah,
was
I
just
mean-
going to say the same thing.
right, but
It's already spent.
yeah, I'm just saying that I think it's a very valid point that Frank's saying, and with all due respect about the question for the administration about how much, each percentage is raising the taxpayer's dollar, I mean this with all due respect, we're 3/4 of the way through approving budgets at this point, so, we can't come down to the last 4 or 5 budgets and be like, how much is that? I would love them to tell us so that you can report it to town meeting, but I think we did this once before, and it'd be very interesting to see which way this committee goes. Do you remember when we were saying we have to see like all the budgets and then know if we're gonna,
Yeah.
because we wanna let.
Position and
And I just don't know which way to do it, Frank. Like, it's like
Well-
hard because I think sometimes I think it's difficult because sometimes the larger percentages aren't necessarily the larger dollar amounts, but
Yeah.
then sometimes, we get stuck in the,
We used to do it that way. We've
Remember
resorted
that?
more
Yeah.
to a case-by-case value judgment and then roll it up, as opposed to trying to get all the numbers and then play,
who's up on the,
whack-a-mole with the budget. That got kind of hard.
I think the thing that we always understood was it was a blended number that came before town meeting. So if the blended number met the guideline, then you could explain to town meeting at that point, whatever that percentage was, means X to your tax dollar, or means X to the levy amount, I guess I should say, right? So I'm careful to say, like, how do you explain that with people truly understanding it? And then, how do you explain that operating budgets are a raise and appropriate, those are your taxes? I mean, there almost has to be like a understanding your town budget 101, because the truth is, some of these things that are coming out of other accounts don't affect your tax dollar. They're coming from different areas, right? So those are set and stabilized, and then there's the other ones that are coming from a raise and appropriate stance. So it's almost like before they start the voting at town meeting, that's the information that should be given by Ways and Means, is this is how much, if the blended amount is this is what that means to the levy if everything's approved. And, oh, by the way, certain things are coming out of different funds which do not affect the raise and appropriate. I just,
And thank you for that advice, is something that the chair should be pointing out at town meeting.
no, I think that it may be.
Very good point.
It just may be very good because some of us take that for granted because we've been doing this for a long time. We started when we were 5, right? And then some of us have not. So if you just get to town meeting, you may not know where the funding mechanism is. And you may say, like, I don't want to approve that because I'm trying to save the tax dollar, when it's not touching the tax dollar at all, and vice versa, That's all.
I think that's very good, and I think, it's kind of timely to bring up now because we do know that the school budget coming up is a particularly big one, so, and particularly large increase also, so it's
Right.
a timely data point to
And
have.
from a budget perspective, we're not even halfway through because the schools comprise a significant portion of that, and then you throw on Shawshene in the accommodated account, and
Yep.
so, we may be total budget-wise, 2/3 along the way, but dollar-wise, we haven't like hit halfway.
I'm with you, I'm just saying that there's a philosophy. I don't disagree with what's being said about understanding the dollar amount. I'm just saying that there should almost be set, people should be understanding that at like the front end of a budget. If we approve every budget as it's written and presented to Ways and Means and it goes to town meeting, this is what that does to the levy.
Exactly.
And this is what that does to the tax dollar. And then you can, know as you're educated with it as you're going through. That's all,
Agreed.
yeah.
I'm not sure what's a salient comment, but I feel like one other thing, so the schools in the town do their budgeting a little bit differently. The schools have a bunch of wants and needs, and they put them in the initial budget, and then they cut it back to try to hit the guideline or get close. Whereas generally on the town side, thanks to the administration, they present us budgets that hit the guideline. They have already made the priority decisions about how to make it fit within the number. But on the school side, you get to see more of what they'd like to have versus what they can ultimately decide we can afford.
And that was a conscious decision on schools.
Yeah.
Right.
Department's part. Originally, they did tend to make those decisions as administration, and then it was brought to the school committee. And the school committee specifically asked to see the sausage being made, and wanted to see, show me the 30 positions that you looked at and, how you pared it down to 3. So that purposely was brought out in the open, just so it was a little more transparent, which I think is a good thing,
It's
but.
good to see it.
But it can be more alarming if you look at the first number and wonder how they're gonna get there.
And on the town side, you do see a little bit of it, like we did tonight with the supervisory cuts. So that does spur a little bit of discussion, but we don't see all of it, for sure.
Yep. Okay, so coming up for next week, we have a pretty full agenda. There's DPW, Youth and Family Services, Historical Commission, Town Clerk, and Board of Registrars, Board of Appeals. We have a number of accommodated accounts for Town Hall 1, the pension reimbursement, health insurance. The debt and principal will probably be moved, will definitely be moved to a later date. Anything else there, and then other accounts, the reserve fund and negotiated settlements will come up then also. And then the following week, we'll have all the schools. After that, we'll move into the non-school warrant articles. I'll send out a proposed schedule. Given all the constraints, it almost certainly won't work, but at least you can get feedback and we'll change it. So let me know if, people are gonna be out on the days that I picked, or if it doesn't work out with your departments that they can't be here to talk about the warrant articles, we can shift it around. But we have three meetings where we can discuss all the warrant articles, so hopefully one of those 3 weeks will work, and then May 8th is town meeting. Right. Anything else for tonight, Frank?
Did we get a bucket for the routine warrant articles? Do we have, did they make the initial divvy of how many millions to the town side, how much to the school side to use for warrant articles?
I have not seen the
that
total amount. All I heard was it was expected to be a traditional amount from free cash.
I heard a big number. I heard 5 million split between schools and town
And what was your source?
hall.
That's pretty good.
You may know.
Okay, so we're thinking 2.5 million,
That's what I understand.
because there's a long list of
Yeah, there's
items
no
here.
numbers attached
So I don't know
yet,
how in the
so.
world we're gonna sort out these warrant articles without a bucket to work against, so that's apparently what it'll be.
Well, I'm gonna go on a limb and guess that the warrant articles don't add up to more than what Paul allocated, but I
Well,
haven't seen the
probably,
numbers.
probably.
Frank, we're gonna have a discussion.
Traditionally, the warrant articles don't exceed the budget for it.
Some of them may be withdrawn, because they had to do that to get the warrant
Yeah.
published.
Yes.
Right.
We'll also be discussing free cash at our subcommittee meeting before next week.
Right, but that, if you and I can figure that out. I mean, he's already taken out of free cash what he thinks he's gonna take, and then you'll get the bucket of this what's left, how do you feel about it? We could get into the discussion of shift some of it to other warrant articles potentially, or buy down more of the bond or something like that, but we'll get to that.
There's always that placeholder for OPEB and so on there in the
Yeah,
list.
I think we know what's gonna happen to that.
It's always-
I agree, actually.
It's always a good discussion point.
Yeah, leave it alone.
Was that the full warrant article list? It looked kind of like it.
Yeah, that's the list that was presented to the Board of Selectmen the evening that I sent that out. I'm assuming they approved it.
Because it looks like it's just all mostly financial articles.
It's essentially all financial articles.
Yeah,
I
that's
believe.
crazy.
I think there may have been one non-financial
Right,
one.
that's,
No, this wasn't, I don't think this was the whole warrant. At least
Oh,
that
yeah.
you-
it looks like it,
I
because
think
the
it's the whole
constable,
one, but
it says constable reports at the end,
yeah,
so.
I think it is. One other thing coming up is the General Bylaw Review Committee is looking at the remote meeting warrant article that they withdrew last time, and they're reworking that. So they'd like to come and talk with us. I've tentatively put them at the end of our schedule.
To us?
Because they want to get a sense of what sort of things would committees like to see. As you recall, there's 2 articles, actually there's 4, but they're in pairs. One was for town meeting and one was for meetings of departments and committees. So they wanted to get our input for what we'd like to see for meetings of committees. So think about what you may or may not like to see there. Again, I put it at the end of the schedule to make sure we get through all the warrant articles first, but this is your chance to have a little input to that as to how it will affect our meetings, or not.
I like seeing everybody's faces and being able to talk to you guys, folks.
I personally enjoy that too. All right.
So traditional.
Motion to adjourn on that.
Very good, enough of that.
Second.
We're adjourned.
That was over the
All right, we're going to switch, please.